those things where I was like, oh yeah, you were quite funny in that, and then it was like, oh yeah, we'll keep that in. So I was like, yeah, that sounds quite good.
That's right. Well, on that note, let's behold this. No, I don't know if does that work? Hi, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we talk about Dungeons & Dragons and how we may fit it into our role-playing campaigns. This week, as ever, we say this week every time, but it's like this week, not surprisingly, it is Fiona. And Hamilton.
I'm here.
How are you, Fiona?
I'm great, Hamilton. How are you doing?
I'm good, actually. Yes, I'm good. I'm good. I mean that honestly. When I say it like that, I mean it honestly.
Yeah. Well, we've got to that point now, like, I think both between us, but also with other people, where we ask, oh, how are you? And then there's a moment going, oh no, are they going to actually tell us how they feel? And then we're like, oh no, we're okay. Like,
just
you make that decision.
We're doing a podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, I will talk about our traumas and like, the childhood backstory, etc. But yeah, doing all right. I think it's very rainy here in London currently. It's like pouring down rain. How's it in Bath?
Yeah, crap. I looked at the weather app, it is just rain. And you know how the weather app goes beyond a week, which really annoys me, because then you get more than a week of knowledge that it's going to rain. So
it's 10 days of just misery. That's how it is.
Oh, one was windy.
Oh, just a little bit of variety in that.
I think it was probably more windy than it was rain. It was still 80% chance of rain, but whatever.
Oh, okay. But with now extra wind, so to speak.
With extra wind. Plus wind. Moving on from wind damage.
Yes.
What are we talking about this week, Fiona, on this fantastic podcast?
This fantastic podcast. Well, today, actually, I thought we'd talk about something that has actually really interested me for a long time when we come to D&D. Mostly because if I go... Do I have it next to me? I think I do. She says... Of course, I've got all my D&D books next to me, but I want to talk about today about the Beholder, which I'm just holding up the monster manual, where it is beautifully emblazoned on it. This, I mean, how would you describe a Beholder from this image, Hamilton?
Batshit crazy. Scary. Like, what the... Like, run. Yeah? Like...
Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty much run.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine basically a ball of fury with way too many eyes, that is what a Beholder is. And I was watching a documentary recently that I think is the In the Eye of the Beholder, which is a D&D art documentary that came out a couple of years ago, and it talks about how important the artwork is to D&D things, so that you can describe it and then hold up what you're just looking at, and then seeing the players' faces go, oh no, that's sort of like, what are we going to do? Because there's only so much description you can do it. So I always think, I mean, all of these types of Beholders we're going to talk about today all have really good artwork, so I would highly recommend checking them out. But yeah, I thought we'd check out a classic D&D monster, one that's been in from the very beginning, and it's like I said, it's visually terrifying, it's stunning, and it's very iconic. And I personally didn't know much about them until I got into Critical Role, and that was kind of spoilers here, but one of the first big bosses they had to face was a Beholder, and just that whole battle really sort of made me sort of enamored with how they act, how they do so, because they are a pretty tough creature. So I thought we'd look at Volo's Guide to Monsters, sort of Beholders, Bad Dreams That Come True chapter, and I thought,
good title.
Go from there.
Oh, we should have gone with that title. Bad Dreams.
No, I quite like Behold This.
Behold this. Sorry, that's what it's got. They are pretty. I couldn't figure out, and I don't know this if you know. A Beholder's a D&D creation. Like, they're not from anything else before. Do they come from anything? Any lore or something?
I don't know is the answer to this. I always wondered if they were inspired perhaps by Doctor Who, because Doctor Who sort of came out just before, so you've got like the Daleks perhaps, there's sort of that mentality. But other than that, I don't really know. And I'm sure someone will let us know ASAP. It's some sort of ancient folklore about eye monsters that float and sort of like freeze you with different sort of magical rays. But I don't know. According
to the internet and the D&D lore wiki, ooh, so there you go. The Beholders were designed by a chap named Terry Kuntz, brother of Rob Kuntz, in 1974. Had been a player in D&D creator Gary Gygax's campaign for 2 months when he invented the creature, which Gygax made some minor changes to before including it in the Greyhawk supplement in 1975.
Wow, you've been playing for 2 months and you come up with a terrifying creature like that. That's a pretty high standard.
Exactly. I know, that is pretty impressive, isn't it? Like, yeah, I'm just gonna, well, like, maybe he was an optician.
What's the worst thing I can inflict upon my patients? I know.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. You never know. So, but yeah, that's it. So that's all it says. Yeah, Gary Gygax even mentions, I cannot take credit for the creature in question, as the monster is, because Terry Kuntz came up with the Beholder after you've been playing my campaign for about 2 months. Yeah, so there you are. 2, that is double sourced.
That is double source. Well, there you go.
Live double source.
That is the first reference we've ever had on DM's Book Club, so congratulations, Hamilton, for doing
Yay! Wow, have we gone professional?
No, never.
No, because we did it live on camera. The question
exactly.
There we are. But anyway, continue. We were talking about.
We were talking about beholders. So yeah, these bizarre creatures are they're sort of described as having an alien intelligence, sort of inhuman forms of perception, and this is the bit I didn't know. It was this ability to shape reality just through pure force of will, and even by their mere presence, which we'll go on to a little bit later. But I think the key sort of thing that will become apparent to, I think, your players when you're putting in beholders into the game is that they are arrogant. They are, I'm the most superior being here, you're all inferior to me. Even other beholders, which again, that's why I sort of compared them to sort of almost like a Dalek type creature, because they are very sort of xenophobic, isolationists? No, that's not it.
What are you looking for?
I don't know.
What's the word? Give me a hint.
Isolationists.
Isolationists. That's it. Yeah, isolationists. Like, yeah. Survivalist sort of things.
Survivalist, that's perfect. Yeah, that's exactly it. They're sort of like, they're on their own, and if they see another one of their creatures, they are sort of almost compelled to do battle until only one stands. There can be only one beholder, so to speak, which I thought,
they're like
again,
Highlander.
is pretty cool. Exactly like Highlander.
There can be only one.
I think we could just remake the whole of Highlander with beholders.
To be honest, it's a very easy check, because Highlander, Beholder. Okay, JR, I'm going to get on it and I will make that front cover now. Okay? I will do that. There could be only one, and like a big Xanathar.
Just one eye-beam.
My eye-beam shooting to the sky. That movie. Wizards, make it. Do it.
Make it Wizards. But yeah, so it's just this idea that they are sort of arrogant, but they're also incredibly paranoid, because obviously they feel that they are the best creature in the room. They're the most intelligent, smartest. So as a result, everyone wants to kill them, and it's that playing that arrogance along with that paranoia that really makes them sort of a really violent threat. Because obviously, if you start to parlay with, I would say a typical beholder. Obviously, I know we'll go into all the different. Not tropes, but different sort of species of beholder later. It's it's a fine line, because obviously it's that sort of thing, a bit like dragons in a way, where you have to appeal to sort of their sort of good nature. But one wrong word or one failed check, then that beholder's going to turn on you, because it's going to get so paranoid that you're just saying nice things just to get on the side, and then you're going to kill it. That sort of like it's. And I always think of it very sort of like. I always want to say like almost like Winston Churchill-esque, sort of like like that, sort of like going around and sort of just acting sort of very erratically, and sort of because all these thoughts are just going through its head at such super speed. If you see what I mean?
Yeah, he's sort of bumbling about and sort of just like muttering and then going, yes, gonna kill, and then disappearing, and then just coming back with blood everywhere, sort of thing.
Did it? Great.
Just with fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think it is just a way to play them, is just sort of that erratic behaviour. It's like, what's going on? I don't understand. But it like almost like speaking your thoughts out loud, because I like that, and I know some of the other beholder types do sort of think telepathically as well. But I love that idea. You sort of come into range, and then suddenly your whole thoughts are like just assumed like by this sort of. Ongoing commentary as someone's talking to themselves, because you're like, no, I can't, no, I could, that's just constantly, that's just really annoying in the edge of your consciousness.
I like that. That's very cool. I've had to play a beholder because I had to play Xanathar in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and he's got some interesting. His layer is actually quite interesting. But maybe we'll get onto that later, because it talks specifically about dreaming, and I think we'll come to that. But when I played him, I kind of made him comical, because they are sort of comical as well. Like, because yes, they are scary in those photos, but then when you really think about it, they're just like a big eye. Like, what is that? Do you know what I mean? And they sort of float around. And so I sort of played them comical, and then on Dragon's Duel we did a beholder disco. And we had like nerdy beholders that were like trying to get into the ball and wanted dates, and they thought legs were cool because they don't have legs, and what's walking and stuff like that, you know, like, and they were all like enamored by legs because they're like, oh my gosh, limbs, amazing, whoa, you know, and I think there's something kind of like easily comical about them because of the shape of them and the sort of like the fact that they're just a load of eyes on stalks, you know, even though they are highly deadly, but they also are kind of bulbous and lumpen and sort of stuff like that, and I kind of like them.
I completely agree. The appearance of them obviously is kind of terrifying. Like you said, they've got usually a giant eye, way too many teeth, like a huge sort of maw, and then all these other eyes are sort of darting around a bit like a Medusa's head type thing. So to go from this sort of image and then having almost like he was sort of portraying like a mild, very meek beholder, or go on to probably gazers in a little bit, this idea of like a very small beholder that is like an annoying dog, as it's sort of described in the thing. And it's just that sort of like getting that disconnect, because obviously people will be frightened of these creatures and then you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, it's like Xanathar with it, because with Xanathar he's got his little fish bowl and his little fish Silgar that he loves, and so I just like made him like this very doting like figure, like parent figure with this like little fish bowl, and making him just care more about that than anyone else involved, and sort of. But then obviously realising that you would know that if you did anything to that fish, you would probably be wiped from existence, you know, like, so kind of like that sort of play on care and fear and like terror. Sort of thing.
Almost like taking that doting parental kind of figure and then turning it up to the extreme where you're like, oh, if you do something wrong, and they're going to be really cross with you and like, how dare you, you know, and there's and I will go on to a lot more about the Xanathar as well, because it does talk a bit of it at the end of the chapter, it's always interesting. But let's go back to that, what you were saying about the birth of a beholder, or how they dream, essentially.
Yes.
So like, this is the bit I didn't know about, but essentially beholders produce themselves through dreams. They have, because they are so intelligent and they're constantly thinking all the time, so even when they're sleeping, which is again, it's one of those things where we're sort of talking about comical stuff. It's like, do they have nightcaps? And if they do, is it for the big head or is it all for the small?
Yes. Or is it like a glove? Is it like a glove with little fingers?
like a little snug sort of
or is it a glove or a mitten is what we're asking for, basically.
Yes, exactly. But so when they dream, they have very vivid dreams where it can be dominated by images of itself or other beholders, in brackets, which may or may not exist. So the idea that it's so concentrating on itself and its sort of self-image that it could create different versions of beholders it's never met. And when it dreams of another beholder, the act itself, this dream, creates a warp in reality from which a new, fully formed beholder springs forth. And it might be, like I said, a direct duplicate of it. It might be some different variety, which we'll go on to. But it could also be a truly unique creature that can be only spawned from the imagination of a twisted sort of beholder. So if you're thinking, like, if you wanted to create like a beholder wizard type thing, and then there's just all these other creatures that aren't necessarily beholders, but you could just come up with like, I think that would be an excellent opportunity to sort of homebrew minions or anything like that just appear just the way it's sort of thing. So you don't have to have suddenly loads of beholders you have to deal with, although that sounds amazingly fun as well. That does
sound quite fun. Yeah. I'm now imagining, because with that lore, because I didn't know that lore either when we did the Nerdy Beholder, but now in my mind the theory is that they were just watching way too much, like they were really into Dungeons and Dragons and they made loads of Nerdy Beholders or something like that. I don't know.
I love like into Dungeons and Dragons, but also like into 80s films, like, you know, like coming of age films where they like, we have to go to the dance. Oh,
yeah, that's it.
Like,
that's literally, no, actually that's what it is. They just watched loads of like, it was a beholder who just watched was it 16 Candles?
Yes, and, that's the film I was thinking of, yeah.
And what's the other? Oh, it's the Breakfast Club and all that sort of stuff. He just watched loads of those, went to sleep, and then woke up and then had this nerdy
having all these other sort of other beholders happening. I love that idea. So well, let's go into some of the main types of ones. So you kind of mentioned, so if they dream and they produce something that's similar to themselves, these are sort of known as solitary beholders. So you're basically similar to them, and their sort of basic instinct as soon as they see each other is to kill each other on sight. So this whole idea that they are the perfect image of themselves, and any other beholders is probably, there's some flaw in them, no matter what it is. So I thought that could be quite interesting to play, like this idea that your party comes into the lair ready to take, and there's two other beholders fighting, but you can't tell necessarily which one's the original one, which one has the weakness in quotation marks there, or has the quirk, or you have them as complete polar opposites. Like they're different colours, they're different personalities. Like you said, one's like the really doting parental figure, and one's like the moody teenager. Is like having that dynamic.
Dad.
Exactly. Like, how could you? Oh, my life is ruined. You know, the eyes like
has its eye stalks over an emo curl, just like down its just like
like a fringe. Absolutely.
Just like what's his, Kevin and Perry or something like that. Sorry, it's now imagining Kevin and Perry beholders.
Whoa, Kevin and Perry go large. Beholders go large. That will be. God, I've not watched that film in years, and that is such a good film. But anyway.
It's such a terribly good film, if you know what I mean.
Yes, terribly good film.
Terrible, but it's good in its own way.
It is good fun.
Of its time.
Of its time. That is the way we label those films from those eras, absolutely. Exactly. The second kind is eye tyrants. So these are the Xanathars. So these are the beholders that have, I'd say they have suppressed so those sort of xenophobic traits and paranoia, and they choose to live as the leader or something, or live with other humanoids or other creatures. So in those communities, so this would be the perfect example where, again, a leader of a thieves guild or the potions person in town, stuff like that. So they suppress it enough, but there may be some things it says, or something could tip it over depending on what it is. So it's still a dangerous presence, but it's something that you could easily introduce to your players early on, and you're like, hey, notice this for later, and you're like, oh god, okay. I having a shopkeep beholder would always be a good fun one, I think, just to have that sort of in the background, like, any bargains could easily end badly. So I just thought that would be
like
cool.
that. I'm stealing that one, Fiona. That's going in the DM book. That's for sure.
damn straight.
Beholder shopkeep for arcade items. Yes.
It'd be like something like Needful Things, that Stephen King's novel. It'd be like behold, I don't know, in the bag of beholding, I don't know, something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, just
something like that.
Just a much more dangerous Pumat soul, basically, is what I've got in my mind. It's just like,
So we've talked about eye tyrants, and we've talked about what solitary beholders are. Let's go on to the other sort of more common type of beholder, which is a lot of them, but smaller, or just all around them. So they're called beholder hives, essentially. So this is when a beholder may experience a dream where it sees itself in a mirror, or see themselves like almost like a house of mirrors, or like
that's
various
exactly what I had in my mind, wasn't it? They sort of or like the freaky ending bit to Interstellar.
100%.
Basically,
So this idea that there are all these different reflections, all these different personalities and stuff. So when the dreamer awakens, these are all little newborns, essentially, which are almost extensions of itself, but like a pale reflection of it, essentially. So, and rather than before, where they would just normally fight to the death, it's sort of like it's more of a hive mind thing. So there'll probably just be a group of them, almost like a family of them, which I, again, love that idea, because that is also equally terrifying. You come across one and you like have that battle, and you're like, we did it, we defeated the beholder. Oh no, that was the baby.
They come swarming in.
Whoa. It's like the Toclophane from Doctor Who, always sort of the balls coming down with the master.
You forget I have not watched any Doctor Who.
I'm just going to say it anyway, because someone will get it.
Someone will, and we could put a clip in there.
We'll get a clip in there.
It also then makes you think of like when we did the Spelljammer with the Beholder tyrant ships, weren't they called? They were called tyrant ships, weren't they? I can't remember.
But they had like a whole group of them, almost like in a web.
The Orbi and the Queen Beholder, and and all that sort of stuff, which just makes you think of these like hive ships of beholders that you just don't want to turn up to.
You don't want them to appear on your sort of thing. So these hives can contain anywhere between 3 to 10 beholders. I guess if you're a DM, obviously the more fun you can have, 10 beholders. But if you're like, that sounds like a lot of family sibling rivalries and stuff like that, just I always think do it in odd numbers, so 3, 5, 7, because I think that's always like you can always get enough variety in them. I always think.
Yeah, you want someone in the middle, don't you? You always
need a middle child.
Exactly. That's it. This one, the sort of death tyrants, is obviously I thought would be a Fiona favourite as my new term for anything horror themed.
Fiona favourite. I love that. We'll have it stamped on. Fiona
favourite. It's horror themed.
FF.
So if it worries too much about its mortality and dreams of death fearing, this and its dreams comes to like it worrying about trying to live on after death and worrying about to prevent its own death may be transformed into a death tyrant, which is an undead beholder, which just makes it even like, why do you need that? Oh, well, because you do. And
but it's interesting that this is the only kind of beholder that transforms itself, like rather than create another one, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So it totally makes sense, that paranoia, that intellect, like eating in on itself. And what I quite liked was that idea that the way it dreams itself being slain, it is reflected in its appearance. I thought that was a really cool, like, flavoursome thing you can do.
So it's like got axed in its face. It's got this big like scar down there. I was like,
like
cool.
a blind eye or something like that. Like, it gives the example, like a death tyrant might imagine itself being slain by frost giants, so it will go and relocate inside a volcano or something like that. But which I think it makes sense in a way. Like that, it gives an example like where you could just drop them in anywhere, right? But I think there's just something a bit, I don't know, you could just do a bit more to it. And they are one challenge rating higher than the normal beholder.
I guess because you can't use non-magical weapons on them. Is that why?
I can't remember exactly why, but their eye cone, which we'll go into in a bit more detail in a bit, it's different. It's not an anti-magic one. It's like an anti-energy one, which means if you get caught in it, you can't heal at all. So if you die on the next turn, you rise as a zombie and still act on your initiative and all that sort of thing. So it's a little bit worse, I think. But that idea that you can't necessarily heal, or you can't, all that sort of thing, compared to not using magic, I quite like that as a alternative, I guess. But yeah, Death Tyrants look very cool as well. Just the image of them, this idea of this huge skull, and then the eyes almost like orbs of energy swirling around it. It looks very mystical, very very horror, very that. Fiona.
I like that.
Fiona.
Yeah, they're very cool. The only thing that I wondered with them that would be quite fun is if you mix them together. And so you had like a hive of beholder death tyrants all floating around. God. Do you know what I mean? Like some sort of haunted house, just never ending, sort of just like every door. That sort of really play on that trick of like, you check every door. Well, every time you check that door, it's just a death tyrant, and you got to get through it. Like, I don't know, death tyrant.
Yeah, what's behind door number 3? It's a death tyrant.
It's another death tyrant. Yeah, exactly.
No, hate that a lot. But there also are sort of subsets of beholders. They're called beholder kin, so they are beholders in sort of maybe appearance, or people would confuse them for actual beholders, which I think is a really cool idea as well. So again, if your players see this image of beholder and it's on all the books and all the animations or whatever, and they go, it's a beholder, you're like, oh no, it's something much worse. For example, the death kiss, which I think is a Fiona favourite.
I thought that was another Fiona favourite as well, because it's got vampires in it.
It's got vampires, yes. And actually, there's obviously the one later on, which is the Eye Drake, which I think was your kind of favourite. You got a dragon beholder hybrid. But the Death Kiss is this idea that the beholder has a nightmare of like fighting a vampire, and it just results in this Death Kiss, which survives solely on blood. It almost has like suckers or teeth instead of eye stalks. And what I loved about it said like it can be mistaken for a true beholder, but it might purposely present itself as a beholder in some poor lighting to get a little bit closer, and then suck the blood out of you.
Does it give you vampiric sort of things? Do you know what I mean? Does it affect you in a vampiric way? Do you know? Does that make sense?
So it does do blood drain. So a creature grappled by a tentacle must make a Constitution saving throw. On a fail save, it takes 22 lightning damage. And the Death Kiss regains half as many hit points. So it's pretty good. And then lightning blood. The creature within 5 feet of the Death Kiss takes 5 lightning damage whenever it hits a Death Kiss. So it's got almost like an aura as well as you're going up to hit it and stuff. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right, bloody hell.
And again, the image of it looks like almost like a squid-like floating creature, but with like the sort of like teeth on the end of the thing.
It actually kind of looks sweet comparatively.
It looks very innocent compared to the others, but deadly. But this is the other thing as well. That image of it, it's large. This, to me, like the image of it looks very small to me, but imagine it's the same size as an actual beholder. So it's scary. I would see these as more like parasitic, like maybe smaller creatures. So you maybe have like a hive of them, perhaps. And they all sort of swarming around. But actually, a big one of those would not want to face that at all.
No, they don't look fun. Well, they just don't sound fun, do they? They look very sweet and innocent, and that's when you think that's when you know they're the terrible one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's a series of beholders and then there's the little sweet one, you're like, no, I'll fight the big one because I know that one's going to be simple.
Yeah.
The sweet
You close the door on the death kiss. You're like, nope, I'd rather face that death tyrant.
Yeah, exactly. Because I know that's evil. I know what that's going to do. Whilst this one, like, is going to literally, blood suck you dry.
It's like that little bit in Jurassic Park where the guy sort of gets attacked by that little viper and he goes, "Oh, you're so cute," and he goes, and he just kills him straight off. You know.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Or the little ones in Jurassic World or whatever it is. The little.
Where they all sort of take over and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about what I would consider, and most people would consider, the cutest then, or the sweetest kind of beholder. These are called gazers. Now, I will admit, before reading about beholders, I wasn't so sure about gazers. They looked weird, and I was like, not so sure. Yeah. But now I'm convinced that they are the cutest little things.
Really?
I think so. So essentially, these are tiny aberrations. Where we thought that the death kiss is much, much bigger, this one's much smaller. And these gazers are born out of fever dreams, where the sense of scale of that beholder who's dreaming is warped or distorted, which I think is a cracking idea.
They are quite cute, actually. Now I've seen some more art of them. I'm like,
I do think the original art of them isn't as good as it could be, but there's definitely this idea. There's a tiny manifestation of a little beholder, and because it's warped and distorted, it just kind of follows its creator around like a little aggressive puppy, which again you can have a lot of fun with. And it's there is a variant where you could create it as a familiar for a wizard, or instead of a pseudo dragon perhaps. And I just thought that was such a cute little thing to do. It can't speak, but it can mimic words. And sentences.
It's like a kenku.
Like a kenku, which I love. It's got a little high-pitched mocking manner, which I think is great as a result. So having that sort of you could I think as a DM, if someone goes, I want to have a gazer, you're like, great, that's an easy character I can get you into all sorts of trouble with. I think any pets that you have. And certainly the more curious or the ones that stand out from the others, the better. It means as a DM you go, what's happened to your gazer? And they go, oh, where is it? And you go, well, I'll tell you what happened. It flew away and has gone into the market without you seeing.
That's amazing. I like that. They are cute now. Okay, I'm on board. They're cute. They're cute. Okay. Now I've seen some more art. The next one, which is the Spectator, is just like a bigger version of it. From what I can gather, basically. It's just like a smaller but bigger version. But the one that really freaks me out is the Gauth. That just looks really freaky.
Yeah, and it's interesting because both of those are much similar than each other. So this idea of the Spectator is it is a beholder that's been drawn across a plane or something like to keep guard or keep watch. And the fact that it's been drawn to this other place, it has this really cool sort of I would describe almost like a ritual where when it's pulled over to this other place, it loses the 4 out of the 8 eyestalks that it has. Which is, again, it's something which maybe makes it stand out differently to the others. But yeah, this idea that it's deadly, it's foul, and it's just a magical guardian, and it stands watch, and it has that same sort of thing. It's not as aggressive as a big beholder, but it is just sort of waiting and biding its time. And then the idea that once it's done its duty, it kind of doesn't want to leave because it's like this is all it's known, and it's just. When it loses its purpose, and that's when the sort of flickers of madness come about. So I think that's really cool.
That is
but
cool.
As you said, on the flip side, the Gauth is essentially they come from the same plane, but it's what happens when the ritual goes wrong and it sort of just appears out of nowhere. And the image of it as well is so different. It's like big sort of orbital eye with a ring of little eyes around.
Very skin stretched and sort of zombie-esque in a slight way, I guess. That's sort of like
it looks almost like brain-like in a way, doesn't it? Like so. And this one, I do think it's interesting because it's the idea that it survives, it sort of sustains itself with magical objects. And so they have this
which
really
makes it even more evil because you're fighting it and you got your fantastic magical item and then your magical item
No. Yeah, because it has a devour magic ray. So again, we'll go into all these eye rays in a second, I guess. But this idea that it uses it, you target it by it, you do a dexterity saving throw. It's not a necessarily high one; it's DC 14. But if you fail it, you have one of your magical items lose all its magical properties to the start of the Gauth's next turn. So that could be your cloak of flying. That could be. It could be the rod, the immovable rod. It could be anything. It's stuff that is affected. That's not single-use items like potions or scrolls.
Yeah.
So, and if it's got charges, it loses like 1d4 charges. So that could be quite significant as well. Like, again, if you're using like a wand and it goes down to no charges and then you roll, because obviously sometimes they might break on when you lose all the charges. Yeah, I like that. I like that ray. It's pretty good. But they also have this thing called stunning gaze. So this idea at the beginning of each turn, it's this horrific eye. If you start your turn within 30 feet of it, you've got to do a wisdom saving throw. Or if you're if you fail, you are stunned to the end of your next turn, to the start of your next turn. So you just could maybe not do anything for several turns as you just can't get out of this eye ray. It just, I love it.
It's awful. It's awful. I really just, no, it's fun, and it's like that's really going to push your players to. But if it starts to turn within 30 feet, I mean, you could literally just. That could wipe out a party so easily, though, couldn't it? Yeah. If they are all bunched together, they all fail a wisdom save. Imagine if they just got low wisdom. You just never know. Like, start of it, that's a whole turn. It's just you could have like half your party.
It says you can avert your eyes to avoid the saving throw. But even then, like attacking
then you've got a disadvantage attack and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah. And then it has this death throes ability, so when it dies, the magical energy within it, that obviously it's been consuming, explodes, and each creature within 10 feet of it must make a dexterity saving throw or take force damage. So that's even more like stuff. But it's interesting because it's only a challenge rating 6 compared to, like, I think Spectres are challenge rating 3 as a result. So maybe
it's not too bad when you actually get into playing it, but maybe it just feels. I think that's a lot of things as well. A lot of these things, a lot of the challenge rating comes down, to it could come down to luck, couldn't it? You could be really unlucky with those rolls, and it could turn really badly, and you could have someone who just makes it really easy because you don't get stunned and you just get some good, because the armor class of 15 isn't very high, really, is it, to be honest? So it's quite
exactly. And the fly speeds as well, like the fly speed of it is only 20 feet.
That's true,
so it can't rush at you. It's very slow and probably horrible as well. I guess it is that stunning gaze ability as well that just really puts it. And the rays are a little bit different, where you got like a pushing ray and all that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different, I think, but it's interesting, but it is. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to play that throughout a combat, perhaps. Maybe you do the combination of a couple of spectres and a Galf as well.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, as you said, maybe it's more of a hived thing, isn't it? The only thing I was to add to that is that we said with the Spelljammer, there's the other types of beholders from older, like the Orbi and stuff. There was another one that I couldn't think of, and isn't there one that is. That is like you said, the dragon one. Isn't there one that's mixed with like a Fey version of it, or am I just completely forgetting? Am I just getting that mixed up?
No, I think you could be right. I don't know. I couldn't find it.
That's what I was missing it, but I didn't know if you knew it. That was why I was asking you.
Not off the top of my head, but I can quickly talk about the eye drake one. So in Fizzbands, we have this sort of it's basically when a beholder dreams of fighting a dragon or something, then this eye drake is sort of born. What's interesting about it again is that it is a large aberration, but in the image I think of it as a very small flappy creature, almost akin to a gazer. But again, it's a half dragon, but eyes everywhere. It doesn't require food or drink. Doesn't surprise me because there's a huge eye and it's a esophagus. But it's taking the sort of traits of a beholder, but adding the personality of a dragon. So it will look for a horde. It will look for a lair to camp out and have a huge treasure hoard. So that could be amazing in the sense of like, hey, we're gonna go fight this dragon. Let's go. And it's like, it's a bit odd. It's not like all the research we've done for it. And then you're like, oh no, it's much worse.
Yeah. It is a really cool visage as well. I love the sort of like jaw coming open with the eye hidden inside it. It's a really good design. Like
they combine that idea of the anti-magic cone with a breath weapon. So, and I think that's pretty cool. Like because that's the thing that you wouldn't maybe if it's like you sneak up on it and it looks very dragon-like, and then it opens its mouth and it's just one big eye and then just goes boof, like. Oh.
Yeah, you try. I think you would try and wouldn't you try and make it more of a like you try and explain it to the characters, it's more draconic like at first, I think, wouldn't you? Just trying to get them on the side of thinking, oh, it's just a dragon. It's like, oh, it's just a dragon, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's a small dragon, because it'd be quite small, I imagine, dragon.
It's large, so I guess it's
not
not as,
is it?
it's not gigantic or anything like that.
Exactly. So. And so you think, oh, okay, it's just a young dragon. Then it just opens its mouth and there's an eye. Like, oh no, what have I done?
What have I done?
What have I done?
Yeah, because it's got dark vision, it's got passive perception of 18 as well, so it's got that same sort of dragon thing, so it will know it's there, so it could like pretend to be asleep or whatever as people are stealthing around, and then again this eye just appears, and then having these rays come out. I assume it comes out of the sort of the wing eyes that sort of flap around, which would be quite cool to describe as well. So yes, but I don't know about this idea of a Fey beholder, but if there is one,
I think I've seen it on the internet, and it wasn't made by D&D, as in it's not Wizards content, but there is one. Yeah, there's a few on there. I could find just now a prismatic one, but I don't think that's the one. But which sounds really cool. But I just must have envisaged it and thought, oh yeah, someone definitely. Well, there you go. There's something for Wizards to add.
Wizards or for us to write up at some point
exactly.
as a because I know they've done fairy dragons, so a fairy beholder.
That's what I was thinking. Like that's what I had in my mind, like a beholder with like fairy like butterfly wings and sort of thing like that. I could kind of imagine it.
Oh yeah, it's all very candy floss colours and greens and pastels. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. So from this, I just wanted to really talk about what I like about certainly this chapter, and I don't think it happens much in Volo's or many of the other books, is that it talks about, if I open it on D&D Beyond, which would be very useful to have to hand, and thankfully it's the first chapter, is this idea that you've got obviously physical characteristics to make up what beholders look like, because as we sort of said, they have different characteristics and stuff. So I really like that. So you can really personalise what you can do with that.
Because you do see that. Like the one you showed on the front of the Monsters Manual is like a big eye. Really big eye.
Yeah, huge. Like, look at that. Horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And a massive mouth. And then like Xanathar, the one they show in there, the Eye Tyrant one is a bit smaller, you know, so sometimes you kind of see them as these big like singular oculus, and then some of them look more like big floating heads with a small eye in them and like more Cyclops-like. So yeah, I kind of like, and they're sort of plated, pitted, scaled, warty.
The sort of, the skin texture, like these tables that talk about it. Yeah, you got like eye color, which I love. It's almost like a Sims creation thing. I like and iris shape.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah,
because with the gazers, they show the sort of the cross hatch sort of iris. But I love that, like having a keyhole shaped iris. Whoa,
yeah,
creeps me out. But I love that. Like it's string of pearls. So it's just again, it's that interesting. So you could again roll all these things and you go, okay, so this is what your beholder looks like. And I think it's giving you that thing, like describing it in such a way that people may not recognize it to be necessarily the typical beholder as well, which I love. There's even a table for eye size, which is great.
That's what I was thinking of. That's what it always, because they do vary quite a lot in the imagery, and
I love how it says on the beholder eye size table, you roll once for the central eye and then once for all the smaller eyes. I just love the idea that you have a really small central eye and then loads of huge, like almost
one huge one and one little one and one huge one, then a medium one. It's all very different.
It's almost like a bunch of balloons.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, that's a image I didn't need to put into
everyone's heads. There you go. Well, exactly.
And again, following on from this, we obviously have tables for personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws, which again names. I love. Yeah. Oh, names are great as well, because this is I didn't really realise.
X's.
There's a lot of X's, which I'm instantly like, but yes, the idea.
Sar and stuff like that.
Coal, Irv, Ox.
Yeah. Velxa. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's that idea. It picks its own name, piecing together sounds and syllables that have significance and meaning. So I like the examples, but I love the idea you could just literally go to maybe a medicine cabinet and just take bits of medicine and put them together.
Amoxicillin.
Zygon energy, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Lucozade. No,
Oh my goodness, I'd love that. Lucozade is the name.
Lucozade is the name of my next beholder. Lucozade. Excellent.
And then it goes on to, and I this is where I think I haven't read the whole of Volo, so I can't necessarily comment on this, but it gives battle tactics Is this the first time I've ever sort of seen this sort of suggestion of how to play a boss monster essentially within a D&D official book? I'm saying that out loud. I'm sure there'll be people going, oh, what about this chapter? But I think because beholders are such an interesting creature and there's so much to them, just giving you an idea of what they can do to really maximize their effect on the battlefield and stuff. So, like, first of all, the main sort of tactic, I guess it's because beholders always are analysing, they always have plans upon plans upon plans. They know what they're doing. They know their strategic stuff, advantage. So here it says they can fly, so they're going to stay out of range and sight of all the magical people or all that. It's got its dark vision. It can fly. It's going to make sure the environment is like that as well. So the idea that the environment you go into is just full of huge vaulted ceilings and not much in terms of sustainable ground, perhaps, like climbing is going to be very difficult, perhaps, because they're going to be very steep ledges. I just like that. It's going to make it, for the players, you're going to have to think about how are you going to get close to this creature, which could then, on the second turn, use anti-magic very freely using its eye cone, which it's this ability of the central eye to just cripple enemy spellcasters like that, which I love, and you can use it on each turn, and you can move it to a different position and stuff. It's great. It's like a, no you don't, sort of movement.
And I must admit, like, comparatively, like, you talk about dragons, we talked about dragons in Fizzbands and how, like, tactically they can be quite interesting, but really, at the end of the day, you just stay out of the way of the breath weapon, and you don't stand in lines if they've got a line, and you don't stand in a big spread, like, near each other. It's basically the trick. But the Beholder is so much more versatile in terms of its movement and the amount of rays it's got and all the different things you're trying to... It's actually quite a lot for the DM to hold on to, because it's not just... Because a dragon is breath weapon, claw, and bite.
Winged attack.
Winged attack as well, isn't it? Sort of, you know what I mean? As in, like, there's the breath weapon is its key fun thing. But then... But when it comes to Beholder, there is so many different things that you can be managing. Like, managing that cone the whole time. I don't think you could do it. I think Beholder's Theatre of the Mind has got to be bloody difficult. Like, because I just don't think it's made for a tabletop.
Yes.
And, but with that as well, it's just, there's... The whole thing it says here, unless its opponents are concealed by fog, invisibility, some other magic, the Beholder can lurk in the dark and shoot any creature it can see within range of its dark vision. And a dark room with a 120-foot ceiling allows it to use this tactic, requiring opponents to create light at a distance in order to return fire with any accuracy. Yeah. So it's like, that's such a great sort of like thinking of like something that you... Because even invisibility becomes absolutely crap because they just go anti-magic ray, and you're like, okay, so they can see.
There you are.
So that one's out. That's pretty much out the door.
Yeah.
And so fog, unless it's not, you have to make non-magical fog, which would be kind of important to like just kind of those sort of tactics instead of being like, oh, I create darkness or I create. I can't think of a good fog spell. There's another mist one.
Like a cloud kill or
exactly.
Poison cloud or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so you'd have to like think, okay, I'm going to start burning some wood and like damp wood or something like that to make some smoke or something. And it's kind of, it's a really that's what I like about Beholders the most is that fact that it puts upon players and DMs this sort of tactical back and forth as well. Which is kind of...
I would say, like, again, going to that environment idea, when my first encounter with Beholder, which sounds like a very, very pretentious, but we were on a bridge in the Underdark, and then suddenly from above we heard this noise, and it coming into view is a Beholder, and we're all going, oh my god, what are we going to do? Because it's a bridge with no railings, no nothing, and we're just like going, cool, we just want to get past this. Like, this is my bridge. What are you doing? It's my bridge. And you're like, okay, we just, we're going to get off the bridge. And you're like, no. It's my bridge, and it's like, okay, and that was a very scary fight, because again, we rolled for initiative, it just went straight up, and then started shooting at us, and so in the end we were like, just run, that's all we've got, and we were just pegging it across this bridge. So we did Theatre of the Mind for that, but at the time we were just like, if we could easily fall. Anytime this ray hits us, we could easily just go over the edge and stuff. So yeah, I absolutely like it's stuff. Yeah, using the environment to really emphasize like you are going to be at a disadvantage because this creature can get to places that because it knows it's created this environment for it. So
it's
I love
so
that.
Cool. It is so cool, and yeah, I like there's lots of things in here. You're talking about the tactics, like the use anti-magic freely bit. It talks about like because the cone suppresses ongoing magical effects, the Beholder might create a secure area in its layer behind a permanent wall of fire or force. So it can just be there, and then it can just look go through, and then it kind of creates its own little keyhole with its anti-magic ray. You know, it's just like, it's just, and it can just go there. If it, you know, you can imagine that the fight starts to go wrong for it, and it starts to hide itself away.
Yeah. And going then to what I guess the beholders are well known for are these eye rays. So it says it shoots 3 of the following magical rays at random, re-rolling duplicates, choosing 1 to 3 targets we can see within 120 feet. And what I've seen done is the DM just asking a player to roll a d10 and see what they get. Because I think that's more fun than you constantly doing it. Because you might get the same ones over and over again, but you might also get all load of different ones, which are terrifying. It goes all the way from like Charm Ray to Paralyzing Ray, right up until a beautiful one I think it's just called Death Ray. I mean, you might as well just do that.
Ignite the Death Ray. It's very much that, isn't it? Yeah. No, I like that. And the Disintegration Ray is obviously the classic, like one that you always think you're like, no, because I can't even save them if they die. Like,
it's just very sad. Like
it is.
But what? And of course it has legendary actions. So of course in between turns it could do another raid to somebody else. What I like about as well is in the lore of it, beholders obviously they're very paranoid creatures. So it does say that if there is an adventurer that's proved itself like worthy or something like that, it goes, I like you. I'm going to charm you instead or put you to sleep, and then you'll be my servant. So it is. If you wanted to play it like that, you could be like, okay, I don't want to kill them, but this one's fought really well. Good job, but you'll be mine now. You know, it's almost like a trophy as well. So you could always play it like that. Because there's, like I said, you've got charm. You know, you've got non-lethal damage, not damaging ones, they're more of effect ones, all the way up to, as you said, Disintegration Ray, Petrification Ray, which I loved because it did say other alternate uses for these rays out of combat, which was it just likes having statues around. Which I thought that's super cute.
I really like that. I think that was that's the other thing you're saying, like they've got not only the sort of role playing and how to play them combat, but also this how they would act out of combat. And I guess it makes sense because they're a very, you know, iconic character to have those sort of things. But it's a really cool. The thing I was going to talk about at some point in this was the Xanathar in Waterdeep Dragon Heist and the layer there. And I think maybe this might be the way to go to jump into it, because there's lots of little idiosyncrasies that they put into that make you really get a sense of that character. And we talked already about his like Silgar, his little fishbowl. Little fish. But interestingly, he has something called a dream nullifier. So he had a wizard construct a device that would prevent it from accidentally dreaming other beholders into existence.
Oh,
so the bowl-shaped,
cool.
It's a bowl-shaped, like it's its own fishbowl that it goes into, which which stops it from magically wake Xanathar when it starts to dream about other beholders. If it's
whoa!
But you can engulf it with an anti-magic field or dispel magic spell, and it will crash to the floor and shatter. So you can really piss him off. But like that's a really interesting thing. And he has an escape route, which they mention here, like they have escape routes and stuff like that. But also, you find a chamber in the bottom, spoilers, where there are loads of statues of old beholders, where he's like, they're all and you've got also beholders just held in like tanks of like dead beholders being like formaldehyded, and they're all the beholders that he's killed. So he's the latest one, but they're all other Xanathars, you know, like in the basement. And it's like a little trophy room of like, here are all what I've done. Like, it's quite cool.
It feels very prestige. Oh, wow, I love that. Oh, that is so cool. Yes, I love that idea.
Very prestige, exactly.
It is. Yeah. I love that. Spoilers if you've not seen The Prestige, by the way, but it's a cracking film.
Spoilers for like a nearly 20-year-old film.
20-year-old film. But yeah, it talks again back into Volos. It does talk about, and it does. I know it does this with all this sort of monster lore chapters. It talks about different layers for each one of them. So the Beholder's layer is always quite interesting. And the ones I just wanted to pick out is this idea that it has eyes in the sky. So even if you drew a huge map of the thing and you're going through, there's like little eye holes or peek holes where the Beholder can obviously skirt through and look and run away. So again, I'm just thinking of having, those paintings with the eye holes and just it looking around.
Secondary passageways, the sort of secret passages you have in fancy houses for the staff, but like for Xanathar or the Beholder to just sort of poke their little head in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like almost like those the big sort of cutout pictures that you can put your head in
Yes,
on the beach and
at
stuff.
The beach, yeah, really bawdy. It's just got a beholder in it.
Yeah, it's a big eye in one of them.
Just
and
like
little
a
eye in the
massive,
other
like
one.
hulking person doing this. It's just beholder.
Look at these limbs.
Could just be lots of Medusa paintings potentially. That
I mean, yeah, like, would you know? It could be like a small gazer following you around, and it just happens to like hide itself in perfectly beautiful things. And yeah, just to go on again, it talks about treasure and what the beholder considers as treasure. And I think it's really cool how it just breaks it down into stuff like tools, gifts, hazards, and trophies and clutter. And what I particularly like this idea of tools is that, if it's a magic item or something like that, it might, if it needs hands to hold it or something like that, well then the beholder's going to use it a different way. So it gives the example of like it can use a magic item but that's held, but it uses like the telekinesis eye ray to do it. So it has, say, a wand of magic missiles, and I just love that image of it, just holding it. I think you could have beholder wizards or magical beholders that focus out and well. So if you wanted to slightly flavour it like that, it'd be really cool.
I like that. No, I really do. And the little layer they actually show in the map in Volos is really nice as well, and a really good way of explaining all the little things we've just talked about and how they could have, or like how they would organise that space and how they would have those fun little things. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And yeah, just to round off on that, it does talk about in the Beholder stat block, it talks about these, the lair actions and regional effects. And the one I just wanted to pick up, this idea of a regional effect, is when the Beholder sleeps, there are minor warps in reality that occur and then vanish 24 hours later. So this idea that there are marks subtly change on the walls, there's an eerie trinket that might appear, and then it just goes, harmless slime may coat a statue. Like, oh!
That's nice. You're just sitting there like... Okay, what's that? It's all got slippery in here.
I just love that idea. You're just describing the room this afternoon. Yeah, nothing happens during the night, and you wake up, you look past at the slime on the statue. Wait, what? It's just like, so that did make me laugh per se. But I just thought that was quite an interest. I've not seen regional effects like that. There's always been something like here's an enemy that's coming, something like that. But I guess when you're warping reality, it's very hard to describe. So I just like that idea that there's just slime on a statue, and that's indicating that a beholder's nearby.
No, I think that's really cool. It's a bit like the little hints they have for like the dragons, the crystal dragons. They sort of like create another. I can't remember if it's all dragons, like if it's or just ancient dragons, that they start affecting the area around them. But like ones with I remember the gem dragons, lots of gemstones might start crystallizing in water and stuff like that. It's sort of a little that sort of sense that D&D always has of powerful beings having an effect on the world is very cool. Yeah, I like that. I also like their pets.
Yes,
because that's always a fun one. I mean, they've got more serious ones like beholder zombies and basilisks and flesh golems, but nothing does beat a little fish in a fishbowl. I don't think, to be honest.
I agree with that, because it's the odd thing about it, right? That's the thing. It's these horrible, scary thing that's it could easily kill you, and it's like, hang on, what is it, little fishy? You're like,
exactly.
huh?
Yeah.
It's like you see that in like Spider-Man villains and stuff like that. There's always like a weak point which you don't expect, or like a thing, and you're having to get these images out, like, oh, they're not necessarily this 2D image of a villain per se. There's something else to them. So I love that. So I mean that's a whistle-stop tour into Beholders. Hamilton, what do you think overall? Like, is there anything that really captures your imagination, or you're like, oh, I'm going to stay away from that, or I'd change this? What would you say?
See, I think because they're so iconic, I think as much as I would like to use them more as like an NPC, I must admit, I think there's something fun about them. I think what it gives you is a lot of things that sort of always, I like a good NPC that's got an edge to them, that I think if they would have that sort of, everyone's afraid of them, rather than play them as a combat, maybe. I don't know what, it's just my personal opinion, but that's kind of what I think they'd be really fun as, and just playing that sort of crazed maniac, as well as the sort of the slightly on edge, but is able to exist in front of humans and being somehow, but is at some point, and then maybe just have them randomly create a little baby one at some point, just when you're staying, you come back to the shop the next day and it's like, meet Zeno, this is this is my Yeah. Hello, I'm Zeno.
I'm new.
How can I help you? Yeah, exactly.
help you?
And then
Happy to
it
help.
turns out to be the blood sucking ones. And then
Or
you're
the
like,
death kiss.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, fuck. Sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I liked your idea of like, it feels like a really good one to like sit down and do a full-on combat of it. Like I would see this one that you'd get the lair set up, you'd have the minis, you'd get all the sheets out, you get the little cone stuff so you can work it out. 'Cause I think that would be such an interesting combat to run, and it would not just for you as a DM but for the players as well, because it's one of those things. I think Theatre of the Mind does it to an extent, but I would just love to see how it's properly played out, and like I would love to try it as a proper run them through mechanically, see what you can do. And I think because it keeps your players on edge as well, like you said, this idea of rolling random eye rays, seeing the damage and seeing what we got this time. I think it's one of those things where it requires little planning in terms of encounter, because you know it's going to be an eye ray at some point. It doesn't matter what per se, because you can just roll it randomly. And it's just making, you're just like, okay, it's going to be this, this, and this. Just keep out of reach. I think it's like possibly one of the most easiest creatures to run. I say that without running it, obviously, but I think it'd be the one I'd love to run. I think
it would be very difficult to run personally, but I like how you think it'd be easy. But maybe I don't know.
I think like in terms of like which one should I do? It's like there's little like you can do, but I think I'm just remembering those legendary actions, just staying out of the way, and then maybe doing a drive-by. Was it bite perhaps if I felt like it, but unlikely. I just want to use the rays. You want to stay out of it, I think. So.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay,
fantastic.
Cool. All right.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Hamilton, for indulging me on my.
Well, no, I to be honest, it's been a pleasure to listen, because you've really, like Beholders, I really like, but you've clearly got a lot of love for them, which is really good to hear. Because I think
there's just something about them that makes me go, ooh, it's not a dragon and it's not a mimic. It's somewhere in between.
It's somewhere in between. That is a good. No. I've never thought of that, but that's a really good point. Actually, they are the epitome of those two put together.
I think so for sure. Anyway, Hamilton, what's up with you? How's things going?
How's things going?
What's up? What's up, man?
What's up?
As we end the show.
What am I doing? We've moved around. We are on Monday nights now doing our Dragon's Duel actual plays. We've got the Shattered Realm on a Monday night, 9 PM UK. That's going well. And then we've got the Darkest Timeline on Sunday nights. Yeah. That's sort of at now as well. We've sort of moved around since everyone was doing charity streams on Saturday. So we were like, let people watch more important making money for good causes than our stupid faces. So we did that. And then we're having a game show at the end of the month, which should be good fun with some fun people, which will be exciting, which I can hopefully announce next week. So that'll be good. And that's about it. What about you, Fiona? What about where and all that stuff?
Me, little old me. Cool. Well, yes. So I run Where, What Am I Rolling? The twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, it's going very, very well. We're currently putting out Mars Colony 39 Dark, which is a two-person sci-fi political thriller, I really, really enjoyed it. It felt like if you're really into your long political feature-length films, it's kind of like that, but it's me sounding really sad most of the time because things keep going wrong on my colony. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed that.
Cool.
Long Haul 1983, which we talked about in the previous episode. That's coming out. I'm currently in the process of just listening back to it and stuff like that. And cool. There's definitely going to be lots of content warnings on it, so enjoy that sort of thing. And hopefully there'll be some happier ones coming out too. I do tend, when I do the solo RPG stuff, like I really, really love it, but when I listen back I go, well, this might be very depressing for people who are just really wanted to find out
have a nice relaxing evening listening to something. It turns out I get you.
It's quite sad. But in exciting news, I have planned a game of Paranoia coming up, which I'm really looking forward. So that is a sci-fi dystopian, almost dark comedy where Friend Computer is like an aging, failing AI system in Alpha Complex, and all of your players are playing troubleshooters who have to help Friend Computer, but if they don't, they might be labelled as traitors and die. And it's that sort of thing where it's very 1984, but also Monty Python-esque, and it's all sort of like, it's like that sort of Warhammer like heresy type thing. Are you saying something heretical? No, are you saying something heretical? like sort of, and it encourages that sort of little competitive element rather than cooperative element between players. So I'm very excited to play that. It's one of the ones I want to play for a long time. So
Cool.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And of course, finally is offer code at DMBC at Third Space Gaming, where you get 10% off your first order, wherever that may be. There's obviously the new book coming out. They're called The Never Deep, the Critical Role book. I'm sure they'll have a copy of it in there. So if you want to pre-order that, use DMBC and get 10% off.
Fantastic.
And I think that's it. That's all our notices. I think that's all our plugs and everything.
I heard someone say our saying on the Winter Elliptics. I did.
Did you? What was...
Yeah. See, on the flip side, and I was like,
I see.
yes. That's just because they're flipping.
I love that.
Because they were
flipping, were they?
Yeah,
they were probably much cooler than us, to be fair.
Yeah, they were,
so...
to be fair. Yes, exactly.
Well, as they say at the Winter Olympics.
Exactly. We will see you on the flip side.
On the flip side.
Bye.
Love you, bye.